To China, it's an inalienable part of its territory. But for many in Taiwan, there's a growing sense of national identity. Compared to China, Taiwan is tiny. It's not even 1,000th of China's landmass, and its population isn't even 2% of the mainland's. But while the self-governing island only has 17 countries that officially recognise it, its quasi-nation status provokes intense angst within China's ruling Communist Party. The uneasy peace that has prevailed since Taiwan split from mainland China in the wake of the country's civil war in 1949 appears to be on precarious ground. Beijing has been ramping up a relentless campaign to try and persuade countries and businesses alike to accept Taiwan is a part of China. And earlier this year, Qantas was one of many airlines who bowed to Chinese pressure to label Taiwan a territory and not a country. So why is China so sensitive about this tiny little island? Taiwan's armed forces pales in comparison to Beijing's military might. And Taiwan's highly developed economy is still a mismatch against the world's second biggest. So the global superpower should have nothing to fear, right? Well, not so fast. Experts say the reason Taiwan produces such intense anxiety amongst China's ruling elite is because it represents a vision of what the mainland could be, a thriving, progressive democracy of ethnic Chinese. And that vision could be an existential threat to the Chinese Communist Party. Beijing expends untold amounts of energy at preserving one-party rule by tracking and cracking down on dissent. And Taiwan's emerging status as one of Asia's leading democracies poses a direct challenge to the authoritarian regime in Beijing. And Taiwan is not alone. Hong Kong, a former British colony, returned to China in 1997 under the principle of one country, two systems. But its democratic ambitions appear to have Beijing hot under the collar. When China announced in 2014 that it would be vetoing candidates in Hong Kong's democratic election for its leader in 2017, a resistance was born. A pro-democracy protests known as the Umbrella Movement sprung up in defiance.
Really divided the protesters because most people here are saying let this traffic go through.
But it was forcefully suppressed and many of its leaders are now on trial.
Democracy or give me death.
Many in Hong Kong now sense Beijing is breaking its promise of one country, two systems and is instead in the midst of a prolonged meddling in Hong Kong's affairs with an eventual goal of assimilation. But the resolve of pro-independence movements in Taiwan will only be strengthened by the deterioration of democratic ambitions in Hong Kong. And soon, that resolve will be put to the test. Taiwan is about to go to the polls for its midterm elections. And the vote will be a test for the country's independence-leaning government. Also among the issues at stake is a referendum for the name Taiwan to be officially used at the Olympics, instead of the Beijing-approved Chinese Taipei. Now, it may not sound like a big deal, but to anxious minds in Beijing, that move would demonstrate Taiwan asserting its autonomy. But beyond the midterms, this contentious territorial dispute is expected to rear its head up again and again and again. And if recent times are to be any indication of what's to come, Beijing seems determined to maintain control of the narrative and keep both Taiwan and Hong Kong well within its boundaries.